Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 6 Pillars to Improving Regional Mobility. This event is being brought to you by Connect Hampton Roads, an initiative being facilitated by Hampton Roads Transit. Connect Hampton Roads is an emerging effort to shape a new plan to support the region's economic prosperity and quality of life by improving regional mobility and supporting outcomes that are truly essential to the region's long-term success, including supporting the region's workforce and families, secondly, attracting and retaining businesses, thirdly, diversifying the regional economy, and meeting current and future demand for travel options other than driving alone. We believe a balanced mix of transportation solutions in Hampton Roads is essential for the region's long-term economic growth and success. Thank you to all of you for joining us today and to our presenters. I want to personally invite you to get involved and be part of Connect Hampton Roads' effort as we move forward in the weeks and months ahead. At this time, I will turn you over to our moderator, Julie Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. We look forward to a great discussion today with remarks from our panel speakers. But to start, let's go over a few housekeeping issues. First, everyone will be on listen-only mode for today's webinar, but we are recording, and the webinar will be placed online with the recorded audio at a later time. We'll provide information on that towards the end of this webinar. We also welcome questions during today's webinar through the Q&A section on your screen. Questions can be submitted at any time during or following the remarks of our speakers by typing your question into that Q&A box. Simply use your computer keyboard to type your question and click the Submit button on your screen to submit your question. General questions may be answered as they are received, but others will be held to be answered specifically by the panelists at the end of each presentation. We will aim to address all the questions received by the end of the webinar before closing the webinar application. However, we do plan to wrap up today's event as scheduled by 1 p.m. Once the event is over, there is a survey that we will have that will ask you questions about how the webinar went. Please consider completing that survey so that we can improve our process as we move forward. Also, we're going to have polling questions during the webinar, and here's how that works. First, we'll let you know when the polling actually is open. The polling questions will be read to you as they're open, and you can click the answers to those multiple choice questions that suit you best. We'll do a little bit of Q&A while you're considering your answer, and then I'll let you know when the poll is closed, and we'll be able to review the answers to everyone's responses at that time before we proceed to the next speaker. So let's start with the first poll. Okay. I'm going to open the poll now. You should be able to see the questions in front of you. So the first question, which of these describes you? Asking for year of your birth. Are you a traditionalist? Were you born between 1925 and 1945? Are you a baby boomer, born between 1946 and 1964? Are you a Gen Xer, born between 1965 and 1980? A millennial, born after 1981? The second question is asking you a question about your belief about public transit in our area. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is extremely negative, 10 is extremely positive, 5 or 6 is neutral. How much of an impact do you believe an improved public transit system would have on local economic growth? Now, your answers are anonymous, so answer, of course, how you believe. Now, as you are answering those questions, I'm going to leave the poll open for just a few moments and introduce you to our speakers. First, of course, we have Mr. William Harrell. He is the President and CEO of Hampton Roads Transit, and you heard him speak at the very beginning of this presentation. Following his appointment to HRT in April 2012, Mr. Harrell established a vision to reshape Hampton Roads Transit into the most efficient and driven transit agency in Virginia. This program is part of that initiative. Thank you, Mr. Harrell. We also have today Mr. Art Gazzetti. Art's a 35 professional in public transportation at the local, state, and national levels. He serves as the Vice President for Policy for the American Public Transportation Association, or APTA, which is the trade group responsible for the public transportation industry. Among other things, Mr. Gazzetti is responsible for APTA's extensive policy development and research agenda. Prior to going to Washington in 1997, Mr. Gazzetti had 16 years of management experience at two of America's leading public transportation systems, New Jersey Transit and the Port Authority of Allegheny County. Before that, he had 2 years at the New Jersey Department of Transportation. Among other positions, Mr. Gazzetti is currently the national president of the Transportation Research Forum. Also presenting today is Mr. Brian Smith. Mr. Smith joined Hampton Roads Transit in 2008, and he serves as assistant to the president and CEO. He oversees special projects and strategic transit efforts for Hampton Roads Transit to advance public policy on local, state, and federal levels that support transit's mission in this region. Brian holds a master's degree in public policy, an advanced certificate in public administration with a focus on public budgeting and finance, and he is a PhD student in organizational leadership. Finally, we are also pleased to be joined by Mr. Ray Amoruso. Ray is Hampton Roads Transit's Chief Planning and Development Officer. Ray has over 33 years of public transportation experience in both the public and private sectors. Over the span of his career, Ray has specialized in transit planning and transit fixed guideway investment for projects in New York City, Denver, Atlanta, Portland, Newark, Detroit, San Diego, and of course, here in Hampton Roads. Before we start our first presentation, let's go back to the poll. So I'm going to close that poll now. Here it goes. We're applying, and you should see those on your screen. What we see from the screen is that we have quite a few people who are in the baby boomer generation, but we also have good representation from the Gen Xers and the millennials, and some of you just do not want to answer, and that's okay. We know that we have a large group. But when you scroll down and you look at how people feel transit has an economic impact in this region, we have quite a large percentage of the folks in that 7 to 10 category, with quite a few in the 10. So it lets you know that of the people on the phone, people do have an understanding and a belief that transit is important to our regional economy. With that, I'm going to turn over the presentation, the speaking audio, to Mr. Art for his presentation, Mr. Gazzetti for his presentation.
And I'm here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I will, good to be with everyone this afternoon. This is Art Gazzetti from APTA, the American Public Transportation Association. I want to thank William Harrell for the invitation to be with you on the call, and to the Connect Hampton Roads for the initiative to take a look at how to lay groundwork for a vibrant future for the Hampton Roads region. My comments are going to be from a national perspective, offer some thoughts of what's going on from around the country, some observations, and to note some nationally significant research. The national trends affirm a rising demand for public transportation. Population is growing about 3 million a year. That, coupled with the trend of urbanization, means that there's going to be more people within the confines of our metro regions, and that trend is going to sustain. It's going to be a question of capacity constraints, moving more people within the same amount of space and doing so efficiently. It becomes a matter of mathematics that a balanced system, including public transportation in a prominent way, is a key looking forward. The demographic trends, the much discussed millennials and the changes in travel behavior, coupled with the aging baby boomers and the need for options later in life, and also the general household trends, which show that public transportation is a good thing generally. The economic trends, we're connecting jobs with people and people with jobs, and connecting the new economy, the knowledge workers, in a way that we need access to the talent pools that help prime the pumps of the regional economic engines. For sure, an important part of a transportation system is to keep the region mobile, efficient, productive, and competitive. You can't have commerce without connectivity. The final trend I want to note here is affordability. Transportation can be as much as 19% of household costs, only behind housing, more than food and healthcare combined. With good transit options, you can save a household $10,000 by getting by with one less car if you have those options available. There's not many alternatives that can save you that amount of money. As we move to the next slide, I want to talk about how, these are some national trends, but how are people actually making decisions? How are people voting with their feet? And I'm going to note three things: ridership, transit ballot measures, and real estate. And moving to the next slide, we will see a chart that shows the national ridership trends before 1995, actually from the 50s through the 80s and 90s. We started to stabilize, but in 1995 there was a big elbow in the curve, in the trend line, and you see the blue line here is public transit growth since then. The green line is highway use registered in vehicle miles traveled, and the red line, a very steady line, but a little under, is the population growth. So you see public transportation growing nationally at double the rate of population growth. Actually, just this day today, the 17th of December, APTA released the ridership for the third quarter of 2014. It is up over 1.8%. We're going to have another year that you have to go back to the to the 1956 to find ridership at that level before the big highway building era changed America. So there is definitely some trends heading towards public transportation. The next slide shows how people are voting with their feet on transit ballot measures. And you'll see this isn't a trend line, it's just showing the success rate. You'll see it's consistently above 70%. In this current year, 2014, 42 out of 61 measures were approved, asking the public, do you want more transit in your community, and willing to support it. In 2013, it was 11 out of 15. In 2012, it was 49 out of 62. What could be more reflective of the public sentiment than that when you ask them straight up at the ballot box? I want to look at some regional examples here in the next slide and talk about the robust pipeline of new projects around the country. Regions are investing in public transportation and finding themselves better positioned as a region. As a result, they want to skate to where the puck is going. I want to showcase a few of these. Salt Lake City, not pictured here, this is Denver, but Salt Lake City wanted to grow in an efficient way. They had a scenario planning exercise. They called it Envision Utah, where they asked the public to help choose the future they wanted for their regions. As a result, they've invested big time in public transportation. Just in 2013 alone, in 1 year, 4 new lines opened in the Salt Lake City region. Denver similarly had a visioning effort. There's as much going on there as in any city in the country that moved towards a public transportation investment, has brought in additional private sector money. They have one of the biggest public-private partnerships in the country, the Eagle P3 project, coupled with some federal money that's been attracted as a result. Low-cost capital results are big, and really they've rebuilt their downtown and reoriented their downtown in Denver. Next, I want to mention Charlotte. Their strategy there is to identify corridors where transportation and development can happen in a coordinated way. They opened their first line maybe 4 or 5 years ago. They're working now on their second line, and there are more corridors to come in Charlotte. The Dallas system expansion is a matter of routine there. Dallas has a plan, and they are proceeding according to plan, on time, under budget, one project after another. The pressure there is to build it faster. a new line is opened every one of the last 6 years. The picture here is of the extension, Orange Line extension to the Dallas airport, and it is opened this year. In Phoenix, you have a region that developed largely in an automobile-oriented way. But again, the region sees its own future more in terms of balance, and the investments in the Valley of the Sun have been in a transit way. The universities are now connected. The public facilities, you see here a stadium, they opened last year, connection to the airport. The various downtowns in the cities in the valley, and the activity centers. And there's more to come in Phoenix as well. I also finally want to mention Atlanta and discuss regionalism. There have been several attempts over the years to make the MARTA system in Atlanta more regional. That has not always had as much success as was hoped. But this year, just on Election Day, November 4th, 2014, Clayton County opted to join the MARTA system by a big vote, and that's after just only a couple years ago having no transit at all. So there's lights out before, but now they've said nope, that's not the way we want to go. That's not the future we see for our region. Moving to research, I'm not going to go in length here, but I did want to identify the different research products here. We understand our changing world of mobility and provide the facts and cutting-edge information through this series of reports. The first one, economic impact of public transit investments, shows that transit investments have, of course, the immediate direct jobs, but also it's the investment that keeps on bringing returns because in underpinning the economy, you can't have commerce without connectivity. Much of those jobs, private sector jobs. And the chart following the cover of the report shows that the combination of jobs from the immediate and ongoing jobs. The next report talks about real estate, and we found that property near transit hubs is valued by the public, again, voting with their feet, valued higher than similar properties not in proximity to transit, quantified in that report. The next report, again, about generational change, millennials and mobility, understanding the millennial mindset. Something is going on. It's an important part of understanding our future. The next report, APTA partnered with the National Travel Association and looked at, the statement that organization made to us is transit makes a difference. And it is a factor in determining where the convention and tourism business goes. And they're saying, we want to work with you because what we do, public transportation, is important to their world, travel and tourism. Those results quantified here. And the final report is looking at these future economies, access to high-skilled workers, need to make the knowledge economy thrive, and need to draw from that pool of workers from the region and make convenient access available to them. Those are some of the themes I wanted to touch on. I will yield to other speakers, but again, I appreciate the time to be with you and appreciate your time and attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Art. We're going to have a little bit of a Q&A, but before we do that, we're going to open up our second poll. I'm opening up that poll now, and you should see that in front of you. So the first question in that poll is, compared to 5 years ago, do you, the participants on the phone, feel that mobility options across Hampton roads are worse today than the past, about the same today as in the past, or better today than in the past? The second question, current forecasts project by 2040 that total regional population is expected to grow between 50 to 100,000 people, between 100 to 250,000, between 250,000 to 350,000, or more than $350,000. Now, while that is open, I'll leave that open, and I'll have a question for Mr. Gazzetti, if he would be so pleased to answer. Specifically, there's been a lot of questions about Congress and how the transportation funding is being handled through Congress and their ability to agree on honestly much of anything. How much can we really expect from the feds for finances in the future on this transportation issue?
What a timely question, because I mentioned ridership numbers just came out today. Actually, over the weekend, we might know, it was in all the papers that the federal spending bill was approved. Anyway, for all the talk about there being dysfunction in Washington, looking to the states, and some of that is true, looking to states for and locals for answers. The fact is that the federal support for public transportation is through this bill at a high water mark. It's $10.8 billion, and the cuts that have come upon other programs have not come upon the transportation program. Now, that's not to say that it's robust. I mean, it's pretty flat. But the fact is, the federal support is still there. Transportation is viewed as an essential investment and a partnership between federal, state, and local.
Okay, I'm watching, and the poll is still going. About 80% of you have finished taking that poll right now. So I'm going to ask one more question. You mentioned that in certain regions of the country, transportation plans have sprouted from that community-based vision and scenario planning, where it really comes from that grassroots place. Can you elaborate? Can you talk a little bit more about that, about how those plans can really be implemented and be effective?
Yeah, what an exciting thing. And I think it's rooted in the premise that, transportation is a foundation for other things. It's transportation and development go hand in hand and always has. The kind of transportation system you have results in the kind of community development you will have. And when you ask a lot of the regions, like I mentioned earlier, Salt Lake City and Denver, regions that developed largely in the automobile dominant years, that's maybe what happened. That was then, and the future is the future. And that's the future they envision. When you ask the public directly and you ask them what kind of future they want for their community, they want a much more balanced. The car's part of it for sure, but transit is important as a balance, A, to give the option, and B, to help shape the community in a more efficient and public-friendly way.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. It might take just a second for it to analyze the results, so please be patient as that happens. It's counting down. It's giving about 15 seconds, so it's almost there. Maybe while that's going on, I can ask Mr. Amoruso a quick question. There were several examples that were cited in the presentation specific to Hampton Roads. Can you maybe suggest which one aligns best with our constraints and current transit uses here in Hampton Roads?
Thank you, Julie, and hello, everyone. It's a good question, and really, we are kind of unique in Hampton Roads simply because of the way we're funded here. Most of those other examples that were shown have dedicated funding of some sort to fund a lot of their operating capital programs, but they, too, in the past have had to address the issues of growing more robustly, and they did, in many cases, look at how to obtain dedicated funding sources. Currently, right now, we are not structured that way, and we'll talk more about this later in the presentations.
Okay, great. I went ahead, the poll analyzed its results, and it's up on your screen now, and you can see the results. And we have a pretty, I guess it's more or less an even split. Most folks seem to think that traffic or transit today is about the same, maybe a little bit better than in the past. And as far as forecasts, most people are thinking that we're in the somewhere between 100,000, 350,000 range as far as population growth. But that is people do understand that we are seeing quite a bit of growth in this area. So with those answers in mind and that kind of in the presentation now, I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to start his discussion.
Okay, well, thank you, Julie, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today and those who will be listening in later online. Art shared some great information and insights into some of the most significant trends that are happening from a kind of a national perspective. I'm Brian Smith, and I'm going to share for just a few minutes about how some of these same trends that Art discussed at the national level are relevant right here in Hampton Roads, and then hopefully provide some helpful background information that segues into the main focus of today's webinar, which is those 6 pillars to improving regional mobility as part of this new Connect Hampton Roads initiative. I guess to start, really with the obvious, and that is Hampton Roads truly is a region of incredible opportunity. From Williamsburg to Suffolk to the oceanfront of Virginia Beach, we are very fortunate to have a region that's really unparalleled in so many ways. Hampton Roads is just a great place to live, to work, to get a quality education, to raise a family, and ultimately to retire, but overall really to enjoy life. Hampton Roads, again, is just a region of great opportunity. Of course, we want to support a thriving region for residents and visitors so folks can enjoy everything that the region has to offer. So it's definitely, in Hampton Roads' best interest to connect people and places as efficiently as we can, and really move people around the region. That's really at the heart of what we're talking about today with regional mobility. In the mix of all of this, of course, we know that there's major sectors that undergird our regional economy traditionally. Those have been tourism, the ports, and of course the presence of military and federal investments in the region. Those really have been economic engines that have undergirded the regional economy. And we want to support those people and places that are connecting to those activities in those traditional areas. We think they always have been and will continue to be key pillars, if you will, that undergird the regional economy, but we also want to help the region grow and be vital in other ways as well. And there certainly are some challenges that the region faces in that regard. Hampton Roads is still struggling to recover from the recent economic recession. Recent reports have shown that we're still about 40,000 jobs less today than prior to the recession in 2008. And meanwhile, that government spending that, of course, has been so important to the region and will continue to be in recent years has really been contracting. So there's definite interest in diversifying the regional economy. But meanwhile, other research has shown that Hampton Roads really doesn't quite favor as well as many cities and regions around the country in terms of attracting and retaining that kind of workforce that's needed for a strong knowledge-based economy. We do know, of course, that the regional population is expected to grow to exceed 2 million by 2040. So on that poll, I think the correct answer on that poll was over 350,000 is what the projected growth in the regional economy is. So really the basic question is, as we face this future and we really desire Hampton Roads to thrive as a region, one of the strategic issues that we face is this idea of regional mobility, and how can we position the region in terms of having a high-quality public transit system that really supports regional growth in a sustainable way, that doesn't lead to more traffic congestion. We certainly have enough traffic congestion as it is, and other negative impacts on the economy. We've talked some about this so-called millennial generation, and that's certainly important. The millennials are going to be a significant part of the workforce over the next several decades, but we also, should take note of the other segments of the population, including those who will be 65 and better. That segment of the population is expected to grow by as much as 80% by 2040. So, the baby boomers, which most people who logged on the call today, I think, said that they fit in that category of baby boomers. 76 million of you were born between 1946 and 1964, and about 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day across the United States. So there are just incredible implications for this in terms of having access to affordable and diverse ways of getting around the region and continuing to enjoy an independent lifestyle, whether that's connecting to work or shopping or medical appointments or social activities. Across the demographic spectrum, from the millennials to the baby boomers and everyone in between, there really is growing demand for quality public transit. Art mentioned some of that in his presentation, and we certainly see that in Hampton Roads. There is significant growing demand for better quality, more reliable public transportation. I'll just reference a couple of examples of that. If you look at the 2040 long-range plan, I encourage you to visit the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. They do outstanding work at the TPO. And expanding public transit ranked as the #1 item that the public rang in with when they asked for input on the long-range plan. And there's other efforts like, again, Art mentioned Envision Utah, and I know in our region there's an Envision Hampton Roads process that the Planning District Commission is kind of overseeing. And there again, some of the research that's been done there already, public transit ranks very highly. There was also a military commuter survey a couple of years ago that also was conducted by the TPO. Over 10,900 respondents took part in the military commuter survey. And what's pretty interesting, I think, is 3 out of 4 of the top suggestions, in fact, 5 out of 10 of the most highly recommended items had transit or a multimodal component as being an essential component of that information. So again, there are many examples of this increasing demand in Hampton Roads, especially. Unfortunately, we don't rate quite as highly as many regions in terms of the currently available service. And sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think this slide here, this in fact is a real screenshot from a iPhone of a friend of mine. And as you can see, there are certainly times in Hampton Roads when we can have traffic congestion really on all the major roadways throughout the region. We've got to find efficient and effective ways to do a better job of moving people around Hampton Roads. So I guess moving on, I'll just share, that's really kind of the background and what Connect Hampton Roads is all about. How can we shape a new plan for connecting people across the region? You know, we've had all of these great surveys, a lot of great input, but we've never crafted a plan to really come up with a robust multimodal plan for the region. That's what Connect Hampton Roads is all about. We see cities and regions around the country are engaging in similar efforts. We've looked at those efforts. We know why this kind of effort is so important. We want to support a thriving Hampton Roads. We want to attract and retain quality businesses. We want to support our workforce, help the region diversify its economy, and all of the things that we know that a quality multimodal transportation system can do. So how do we come up with this plan? Where do we start? Well, we start by asking the public, what does the public want? That's where we began earlier this year. We conducted a survey. Maybe you participated in that survey. If not, you can. I encourage you to see the results at connecthamptonroads.com. Over 13,830 participants from across the region took part in the Connect Hampton Roads survey. This next slide gives you a sense of the distribution of the survey results, the participation, very diverse from cities and counties all the way from Suffolk, even from North Carolina, all the way up to the Northern Neck, James City County, Yorktown. A lot of input on the Connect Hampton Roads survey. This is kind of interesting. One of the things that jumped out was this question. In fact, that was one of our earlier questions as well. What kind of impact do people believe that an improved public transportation system would have on local economic growth? And as you can see there, the answer was about 82.6. So people believe certainly that transit, a better regional transit system, would be a positive thing for Hampton Roads. But they also cited different factors that inhibit, if you will, the use of transit today. These are some of those items. I'm not going to share all the results of the survey today. I encourage you to visit connecthamptonroads.com to find those results. But you see here that commutes are frankly not convenient compared to other ways of getting around. There's long travel times. And just the availability of service is just not meeting public expectation. And then folks also rated different factors that they felt were important in a better regional mobility system. And you see some of those items listed here. So these really depict some of the key findings, if you will, some of the themes that emerged from the Connect Hampton Roads survey in particular. And they really begin to form the backdrop of what we're calling here the 6 pillars of what a new regional multimodal plan could look like that, of course, we're calling Connect Hampton Roads. So with that, I think I'll wrap up, and thank you for the opportunity to share today. Appreciate this time to be with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian, for so much of that information. Our third poll actually is going to wait until after Mr. Amoruso's presentation, but we've had several really excellent questions come in. Several of them have to do specifically with how we're funding this plan. The first question, of course, is having the kind of regional system you're talking about is obviously sounds very expensive. So how exactly are we planning to pay for all of this?
Oh, well, okay. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for that question. That is a very important question. There will certainly be costs to the plan that is developed. At this phase, we do not have any preconceived ideas about how the Connect Hampton Roads program would be paid for. We're currently at the stage of identifying what should be in the plan. But as we move forward later into next year, into 2015, we will certainly be evaluating a variety of alternatives for how the plan could be implemented and paid for over time. So I think in those later phases of Connect Hampton Roads, that's absolutely an essential question to grapple with. If I may share one observation, one of the major takeaways as we looked at other places around the country who are engaging in similar efforts is we saw you have to do rigorous financial analysis. It's not only a matter of answering the question of, well, how much is it going to cost and how are we going to pay for it, but you also have to answer the basic question of what is the return on investment? What is the business case for why this program would be a good program? How many jobs would be supported? What are the economic impacts of the plan compared to how much the cost would be? So these are the kind of questions that we'll certainly be addressing as we move forward. And as part of that, definitely we'll need to, that's another one of the key takeaways, being open and transparent, really demonstrating accountability and being good stewards of public resources, and involving the public and stakeholders throughout the process as we go along. So we'll be doing all of those things as we move forward.
That actually, Brian, leads us into a really great question that also came in. When you talk about that partnership in the region, one of the questions that came in has HRT approached DOD or the ports as financial partners for this kind of planning, regional transit planning in this area?
We are, that's a great question as well. We are routinely engaged with major stakeholders in the region. In fact, earlier this year, as we began to discuss this important topic of regional mobility, military stakeholders, business leaders, other community stakeholders convened for a series of roundtable discussions to begin to address the topic of regional mobility, how important it is to the region. And additionally, we have a lot of other important studies going on. For example, right now there's a light rail corridor, or excuse me, a fixed guideway corridor study in the city of Norfolk, and to potentially connect light rail or some service like that to Naval Station Norfolk. And the Navy has been a key stakeholder, obviously, in that process from the very beginning. So we are definitely engaged with our key stakeholders in the Department of Defense and our municipal partners and others around the region.
Another question, I'm going to read this directly off the screen because it really deals with some of our ADA constituents across the region. It says, I live in Hampton Roads and I'm blind and I rely on public transportation. Do you think as more awareness is raised about various disabilities, and also I think I'll add to that our aging population, that the government will allocate more funding to expand transportation, or do you know if any such plans exist for such?
Well, Julie, this is Ray Amoruso, and I'll take this question. And thank you for that question. It's a fantastic question because oftentimes we overlook what we're graced with in terms of having sight, and there are challenges to mobility in terms of those that have visual challenges. And certainly the whole essence of the plan and the whole Connect Hampton Roads program is to look at ways to invest in things beyond what HRT does today in a limited fashion. We want to offer more choices to the entire community out there, whether you have mobility challenges or visual impairments. We need to invest so that all folks have an opportunity to access medical appointments and shopping appointments. So as we talk about the plan, I'm going to talk specifically of those 6 pillars about what we're looking for to invest in as we frame the plan out with your help. So thank you for that question.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question before we move on, Mr. Amarus, for your presentation. And I think this is really a great one for both Mr. Smith and Mr. Amarus to chime in on. The question was, is how does this transit vision plan that we're creating there relate to the region, the plan that's already been developed for this region? And as a follow-up question that came up was, does it integrate any of the ULI planning that ULI has been doing for multimodal efforts in this region?
Okay, I can take a shot at maybe the first part of that question. I think what the question is referring to is the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Vision Plan. That was adopted by the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization in 2011, I believe. So it's been a few years ago, but the TPO did adopt a Regional Transit Vision Plan. That is certainly a valuable document. I think one of the key aspects of that plan is that it did identify some major corridors in the region and some potential kinds of multimodal services that might work in those corridors. So that is certainly information that we can lean into as we are developing the preliminary Connect Hampton Roads plan that will be drafted as we move forward. However, I will point out one thing. Chapter 4 of that plan, which I'm familiar with Chapter 4 in particular, because the one thing that jumps out to me is Chapter 4 specifically says that it's up to local and regional stakeholders to take elements of that vision plan and move it forward. So it is truly a good vision document. It had some good information in there to glean from, but at the end of the day, it's about regional and local stakeholders advancing what they ultimately want for the region. That's what we're trying to discover and ultimately implement through Connect Hampton Roads.
And maybe, this is Ray again, maybe just to add on to what Brian said and address specifically the Urban Land Institute, ULI. A lot of the municipal partners around the region have retained the services of ULI to help them look forward in the future about how this region can grow and how it can grow smartly. We've been in dialogue and invited several times to participate in these programming efforts as they look forward to the growth initiatives, and certainly they are going to be a key stakeholder along with a lot of our other partners that we're going to be talking to help frame the plan.
Okay, and with that, there's several great questions that are coming in, but we have to move this forward. So I think several of them will be answered by Mr. Amarus's presentation.
Okay, Julie, what a great introduction. Thank you, and good afternoon, and it's, I guess, my turn now. And I want to take a moment just to step back and point out what I've heard as I listen to my fellow speakers. I think Art made a very compelling case of the importance of public transportation and how it affects our lives on both a very personal level and as an overall community or region. If you listen carefully, you might have heard Art that touched upon several themes that were centered on economics, at the very personal level of affordability in your household finances, and then as a region, the vibrancy of that region. He talked a lot about demographic trends in America and the changing expectations for mobility and the needs, and how some things that come in sync, both for millennials and for our boomers. He also touched briefly upon how we can grow smarter in all of our cities, all of our suburban areas, and even in rural areas. I think Brian did a very good job in his presentation of telling us and sharing with us what we learned from the respondents of the Connect Hampton Roads survey, what other parts of the country are doing similar to the Connect Hampton Roads effort, and the lessons that we might glean from those efforts. And then he covered about some of the economic trends that are unfolding in the Hampton Roads today. So really my job today is to talk about the 6 pillars that will form the core of the draft plans that we'll develop here. But certainly, we're looking for your help. We'll be preparing that draft plan and formulating it framed around the feedback that we provided by the survey respondents, gleaned from speaking with a variety of institutions, people who represent our military installations, civic leagues, current users of public transportation, chambers of commerce, business community at large, the paratransit community, alternative modes such as bicycle and walking, and even, very important, people who don't even use transit today. All of those voices are important and will help to shape the 6 pillars. And the 6 pillars, we start with pillar number 1, which is the very best essence and core of the Connect Hampton Roads plan. Enhancing our bus network and our transit hubs over and above of what we provide today. Anybody that uses transit today knows that our bus network has geographic gaps in the system, and this pillar will be focused on providing a comprehensive geographic coverage that not only fills the gaps in, but also provides frequent service that is consistent throughout the service day and service week, and consistent no matter what community you're living in or traveling to. We're going to work specifically on developing commuter-based service plans that meet the local needs that are currently not being met today. And what I mean by that is perhaps you live in a neighborhood that's a little bit landlocked, or perhaps is framed by cul-de-sac streets where we can't get traditional bus services in there because of its size. We're going to be looking at branding special circulators to serve residential communities that perhaps are smaller, or perhaps in areas that have grown like the Peninsula Town Center, having circulators to move about the town center area and connect to the fixed bus route system. We also want to ensure that we're going to develop a system that is fully open and completely accessible to all persons with all types of mobility challenges. Pillar number 2 certainly garners a lot of attention in newspaper stories and general media attention. Certainly garners a lot of dialogue in the community, and we're grateful for that. We have our first investment, the Tide in Norfolk, and we intend to, in this pillar, define the need for additional fixed guideway options that are looking at all kinds of technologies, such as light rail transit, bus rapid transit, additional ferry routes, passenger ferry routes, and bus high-efficiency vehicle lanes that connect longer distances in all of the cities, even beyond our service district, into the Williamsburg, James City County area, all the way up to Suffolk, looking at Poquoson and other towns like Yorktown. We need to be interconnected to allow the movement between the different investment choices that the plan will recommend. Pillar number 3, park and rides. Very important. As we look at mobility choices, transit has always said, first and foremost, we understand that people will never leave their cars and entirely depend on transit. But we want to partner with the automobile, and the way we can do that is provide more opportunities throughout a comprehensive network of park and rides strategically located throughout the greater region that provides the ability for people to leave their home, perhaps take their automobile, park in a centralized location, and then board a light rail train or board an express bus that's integrated with individual cities and counties' own land use plans and growth strategies. And who said that park and rides had to be facilities that are simply providing the parking space? I've worked in areas of the country that looked at partnering with the private sector and business community to provide access to retail services and service establishments. There's nothing wrong with bringing your dry cleaning in the morning to drop off and then picking it up in the evening, or perhaps picking something up for dinner at night after you come back home from a hard day's work. Park and rides have that opportunity, and we're certainly going to be looking at that in this pillar of our plan. Pillar number 4, we've called this transit passenger facilities and amenities. And if you recall from Brian's discussion about the survey respondents, the hunger is out there to provide passenger amenities that provide a dignified waiting area that's clean and safe and comfortable and provides real-time passenger information. Our millennials have told us over and over again, I have a cell phone device. Why can't I be told on my device when that next bus is arriving? We want to enhance that customer experience. You should have a place to sit down and a bus stop that's well lit. And these are going to be key components of this pillar. As we look at developing the individual bus stop locations with better facilities and amenities, we want to look at our transfer centers where 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 routes come together. We want to ensure that those transfer facilities are sheltered, have defined areas that the buses come into, provide customer service information counters with real human beings that you can talk to. And why aren't there public restrooms? We need more public restrooms for those longer travel distances. And make it as convenient as possible for providing fair vending equipment. Pillar number 5, active transportation. These are complementary transportation investments that are integrated around modes of travel that other people talk about a lot. And this is our first mile, last mile concept. bus stops and transit hubs and park and rides that connect to bicycle lanes and bike and pedestrian pathways and that are accessible. These are key investments required in the element, in this element. And we're also going to look at zip car or car sharing opportunities at key transfer centers and also bike sharing programs throughout the region. And then finally, we go to pillar number 6, transit supportive services. These are things that are less visible to our customers or future customers, but are very important. We're going to make key investments in rolling stock, new additions to the fleet, new buildings that take care of the fleet, new investments in information technology and security. We need to ensure that we don't forget about quantifying the cost of those services so that we can keep the future fleet and the future assets in a state of good repair. So all told, that brings us to the draft concept of the 6 pillars of the plan. And with that, Julie, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. We are running close to the end of our poll today. And we started about 5 minutes late for the webinar, so we'll probably end about 5 minutes late as well. What you're going to see in front of you, I just opened our final poll. And this poll, I'm not going to read the questions to you because Mr. Amoruso just went through those pillars. The first question specifically is asking you, of those pillars, which one is important to you personally? The second question is asking you, which one of these pillars do you think is most important to us as a region? And while you're answering those, I'm going to go ahead and ask Mr. Amoruso a couple of the questions that have been coming in. Specifically, one of the questions is talking about this plan is obviously going to be a very large plan. What's the timeline for this, and when are we really going to see projects hit the ground, and how long is it going to take to build it all out?
Thank you for that question. And Mr. Harrell at the end will talk about the timeline for the program itself in terms of the next phases. But overall, we envision this plan is going to contain many elements, and we know that some of them could be accomplished in a relatively short time frame, certainly passenger amenities and better shelters. But by its very nature, fixed guideway investments, whether it's light rail or bus rapid transit, these are things that take time. So we're going to kind of try and categorize the different elements into time horizons of short-term, mid-term, and long-term horizon or time frames. And what we'll do with that is kind of capture that around the sequencing of years. Of course, part of the development of that is to also come up with a financial plan to understand how we can match financial resources to the actual construction. I think overall, taking a quick guess, this is a 20 to 30-year horizon of investing in all 6 pillars. Some of them can be accomplished within the first year or 2. Others will take much longer.
Okay. A lot of questions have come in. I'm going to summarize a lot of different questions here because I think they all kind of come to the same point. And that is people are asking questions about how this is going to connect to the bike ped community, how is this going to connect to the housing community, have we considered how this connects to the rural and the suburban areas. But all in all, they're really those questions then summarized with how can they get involved and have a say in this plan, because it sounds like we have it all planned out. So where are we going next with planning? How can people get involved and make sure that all the stakeholders have a say?
Thanks. And another good question. We started as a basis with the responses we got from the Connect Hampton Roads survey to help frame the work that we're going to be looking at over the next few months. When we roll out the draft plan in the first quarter of next year, we intend to hold a extensive series of meetings with stakeholders at the civic league level, the business community level, with all institutions and players, military, educational, to get input on the plan and help reframe the plan and shape it to exactly what you talked about. I covered broadly the desire to do things over and above what HRT can provide today with its limited resources. But really, constituencies like the bicycle community, advocates for bicycling, advocates for pedestrian pathways, help us understand what your desires are, and we will come out to you and meet as frequently as possible to help better shape the first draft of the plan. And we'll bring that second draft out and third draft out till we truly reflect what you're looking for.
Okay, I'm about to close the poll now. I see a couple of you in progress, so if you can click really quickly, because I have 2 seconds. About to close the poll. Going to close it. One more. Okay, there we go. I'm closing the poll. And it's going to take a couple of seconds for that to come up. As that's coming up, I just want to let you know that Mr. Harrell will be providing closing comments in just a moment. Before he does that, when you leave the webinar today, please remember to take the survey. This is our first webinar here at HRT, and your responses to that survey will help us improve this process for future webinars. Okay, So the poll results just completed, and I'm applying those now, so you should be able to see those pop up on your screen. Mr. Amerson, did you want to kind of have a summary about what it seems people are saying about their individual results versus what they think is important to the region?
Well, it's interesting when you look at the numbers on individual results. The enhanced bus networks, no surprise there, and transit hubs seem to be one of the top responses, as well as active transportation, that first mile, last mile concept. I see a lot of responses there. And then equally, a lot of folks have said all of the above. And that's no surprise. We do the best we can with the resources that the cities generously provide, but there's so much more we can provide, and that is the intent of the Connect Hampton Roads plan. On the second question, again, I see all of the above is checked as much as the enhanced networks in terms of importance to the region. And I think truly high capacity, which garnered almost the greatest number of votes, I think it did, the desire and hunger for additional investments similar to the TIDE to connect those longer distances and truly bridge the waterways and gaps in the system to connect various cities and counties. So very interesting responses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amoruso, and I certainly want to thank the entire HRT family, from IT to planning to practically every department has played a role in this and will play a role as the Connect Hampton Roads program moves forward. I also want to thank you for your participation because, you know, as you know, we are committed to a robust public participation process and engagement, and we will be conducting a series of webinars over the upcoming year as we advance the various phases of this initiative. As Mr. Amoruso mentioned earlier, there are three essential elements of the Connect Hampton Roads program. The first was the public survey, and to our knowledge, close to 14,000. I think the actual number was 13,830 individuals responded to that survey and gave us their responses, and that concluded in the October time frame. And that, again, is the first phase of the program, the foundation of understanding what the public wants. We're in phase two, whereas Mr. Amoruso laid out the 6 pillars of the draft Connect Hampton Roads plan, which will be available in late February of 2015. At that point, we will have another robust public engagement process to make sure that plan hits the mark. In fact, we will be having our next webinar in March of 2015 to get your direct feedback on that. So please make sure you don't miss that. You can email us at info@connecthamptonroads.com to join our mailing list. That's info@connecthamptonroads.com to make sure you're a part of this effort. There were some appropriate questions about, okay, this sounds like it could cost quite a bit. How are you going to address that? And that is the third and final element of the Connect Hampton Roads program, the financial plan, and that will include a complete analysis of costs, phasing, and funding alternatives. And Mr. Smith talked about that. We intend to have that plan available by the summer of 2015, and that is really when the boots have to hit the ground. There will be ongoing engagement as well as legislative planning and advocacy. So stay tuned for that. We're going to need all of the various communities to help us advance this issue. Our website, www.connecthamptonroads.com, will be updated as the primary resource site for these efforts. So please be a part of that. And also share this information with friends, family members, and coworkers as we grow awareness to this strategic initiative. So in closing, let's focus on a critical question. As Hampton Roads leaders, as the discussion started just last week, as Hampton Roads leaders grapple with the challenge of shoring up our existing economic engines, i.e., the military, tourism, and the port, while trying to nourish entrepreneurship, startups, and enticing the millennials and the new workforce to Hampton Roads. Shouldn't the issue of improving mobility be an integral element of that conversation as regional solutions are identified? We all know and we believe the research supports a vibrant, multimodal, integrated transportation system which catalyzes transit as part of the foundation of building a stronger region, a stronger Hampton Roads. The bottom line is this: we want you to be part of this movement because guess what? We all have a stake in it because our future depends on it. So again, thank you for your participation today and help us connect Hampton Roads. Have a wonderful afternoon.